All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil. And I want to talk about the video Arnold posted talking about CAW taking a break from territory wars for 3 months. I initially wasn't going to really react to this, right? I wanted to kind of let Arnold run with it, but I got a lot of people asking me my opinion for it. So I want to cover that, talk about the impact this has on the game, what I think, just my thoughts about it, because it is really, really big news. So let's dive in, guys. For those of you who missed this video, right, what Arnold's guild said is that we're going to be taking a break from territory wars as a protest that this game needs an overhaul. They don't like it. They think there's a lot of stuff that's broken in territory wars. I can completely agree with them. And for context, this guild is the best guild in territory wars. They went on some like 11-month win streak, right? Like they are very, very good. If I was to go on to, let me go to the guild leaderboards here. Let's see, come on. Where's the guild leaderboards? Will it show me here? Yeah, so the guild leaderboards, this CAW Patrol is the guild, right? This guild, I think they reset the territory war thing, but they are the best guild, right? They went on like an 11-month win streak, like I said earlier. And they're saying they're taking a break. The territory wars is too time consuming. There's stuff that needs change, and I can understand that. What I do want to say, listen, I do need to say this. I understand their burnout, right? But I think they need to take a little bit of responsibility and say that they were switching mods. Like we need that full story for people, that they were switching mods for territory wars. They were focusing datacrons solely for territory wars, that they were doing all these things, spending more and more time on the game to perfect a game mode where there's not a lot of benefit to winning outside of your pride, right? Which is okay, right? They took pride in their territory war. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't portray that. Like I was friends with a guy who was in a guild like that. And they even went as far as to have territory war buddies where, let's say your guild opens up this zone right here, right? Your guild's going to open up this zone. If I'm asleep, my territory war buddy will do their attacks. Then we'll log into my account and do my attacks, so that way we can clear this zone. I mean, that was the level of competitiveness that these kind of guilds were doing. And I don't know if that was happening in CAW. I just know that from someone that was in that kind of level, that's what they were doing. I mean, you were streaming attacks, right? You have these mods and datacrons. Everything was so specific because they crafted this defense. And your territory war officers would spend hours and hours, days coming up with plans, being online at all times to make sure that this was going smoothly. So I can completely understand that. And as a guild officer myself, I can tell you that territory wars is extremely stressful. So in terms of how bad this is for the game, it's not great, right? This is not great because this is the best guild saying this. This is the equivalent of Pep Guardiola coming out and saying, I'm retiring from the Premier League because I don't like XYZ. Here's all my reasons. The schedule is bad. The refereeing is bad. They need to overhaul this, the, FFP, whatever, right? Even though his club is the biggest, abusers of FFP. That you're going to take him seriously. Now, if only he does it, it's probably not going to carry as much weight, right? The other 19 clubs will be like, yeah, whatever. We're going to move on. But if some other guilds join CAW in this protest, I think Capital Games would have to respond. Because the top-end players are what's driving this content, right? You're a player who's going to start the game now, who's only been playing this game for a year. They're not as concerned if they get new content because they're trying to catch up to what's already here. That any new content is always aimed at players who've been playing this game for 5, 6, 7 years. So, CAW saying this is bad. It's just not. If this was Warfare and I was comparing it to what it would be, this is the equivalent of 2 destroyers next to each other and them getting on the loudspeaker and saying, change your course or we're going to open fire, right? This isn't even a shot across the bow as a warning. Like, they're just kind of throwing it out there on the radio. And I think that the next step for them, they really will have to curb spending. Because you can't just say, oh, we're not going to play territory wars, right? We're not going to do this. But I'm going to come out here every single time and buy every pack that comes around for every new character. You know what I mean? That would be equivalent of one of you guys saying, Phil, I hate your videos. I don't like what you're doing. You defend CG too much, but I'm going to join your channel membership, right? Like, you're not going to watch my stuff, right? You're not going to like participate, but you're going to give me money, right? Like that's, so they're definitely going to need to curb spending significantly, because I guarantee you one member of a guild like CAW probably spends more than my entire guild combined, right? But I want to give them, like, and I'm not trying to bash them completely, because I want to give them a lot of credit for having the stones to do this, because that's not an easy thing to do. And these are the best, like, these are competitive best players saying this, so we need to take that seriously, right? Like that, like this guild, that is just, it's scary that they're doing that. So what I think Capital Games needs to do to win back CAW and bring them into the fold and kind of, I think there's a couple of things we could do. Number one, like, I'm not going to show my guild's defense, right? I'm not going to show, because we have commands here, and I don't want to be, I'm not going to show that, because we take our, I'm not going to say we're as serious as them, but we do pretty well in territory wars. But what would be super nice is if they kind of adopted the GAC model of defense, where throughout the month, my guild can come in here and edit our defense, right? That throughout the month, we can edit defense, and that instead of this preview phase, and then set defense phase, and then attack phase, you just go straight to an attack phase, because your defense has already been set by the guild, that the whole guild is automatically signed up for territory wars and people can set that defense. I think that would be so much better, because you're eliminating the amount of time you need to interact with this game mode of setting defenses, right? As an officer, I know that I'm constantly chasing people down to set defense, right? And you're throwing this and that everywhere. So like that would make things better. Because the other thing you could do then is you could limit the amount of defense a single player can place. The impact a person can have on a territory war, a single person, is absurd. That I can place my entire roster on defense, right? I can place my entire roster on defense. Same thing like on offense, I could throw my entire roster in do attacks. And in some ways that's very good, right? That allows us to, you know, win sometimes, because you have somebody who's going to be able to do more than someone else. With that same thought, though, you're, from a competitive standpoint, you think of like at the top end, it's not as big of a deal because their defenses are so good that like, you know, you couldn't throw your entire roster and hope to clear teams. But at like if I was to leave my guild and go down to a guild half my size, the impact I would have is ridiculous. That I could set down Jabba, Lord Vader, Jedi Master Kenobi, and people might not even be able to beat those teams, and then offensively save everything else, and like my guild's gonna go win. So, I mean, I'm just like, that's another thing you could do, right? Limit your offensive and defensive contributions, and that way, one, you don't have to interact as much, but two, it's a much more guild-centric event. That way, you don't get people who are just slacking for bare minimum. They've got to actually put some work in. But I think being able to set defense beforehand would be a lot better. The other thing I think could be cooler, or maybe better, is if you took away that defensive phase, you could make the attack phase a little bit longer. Maybe you extend it to 48 hours, or maybe you just leave it at 24, but you could throw an extra territory war in there, which sounds like more content, except that if it's only attacking that you have to do, you don't have to worry about changing defenses constantly, all that stuff, like, that could be fine, right? Like, that'd be fun. I'd say the other thing they could really do with this game mode is just freshen it up. Like, they introduced Datacrons as this way to, you know, basically come on here and be like, oh, we're going to change the meta, right? It's going to keep things fresh. Except that it doesn't, right? Datacrons, really, all they end up doing is you try and get the best Datacron you can for your Galactic Legends to make them unkillable. And sure, you might get a Datacron once in a while that is Galactic Legend level, right, for some characters, you know. But really, a lot of times, they're just, you know, it's the same stuff, right? It's like, oh, I got to find a new way to beat this team. And I really think that Datacrons are driving players away rather than keeping them engaged. And so my personal opinion, I think they felt the same way. I think CAW even mentioned that Datacrons have just gotten like out of hand. They just need to go away. I think if Capital Games wants to succeed and continue to keep players engaged with game modes, they need to just take Datacrons out. I don't care what revenue they generate. It's so ridiculous that they keep cropping up. Anytime I hear somebody leaving nowadays, Datacrons always get mentioned. Like, read the signs, right? A guild like CAW that is benefiting because they're willing to spend on Datacrons is saying, this is ridiculous, we're going to stop. I mean, hats off to them, right? And then the last thing I want to mention about this, right? Like, what can, you know, what impact is this going to have on guilds below CAW? Probably nothing, right? Like, I don't think they're going to change things if a 100 million power guild isn't joining Territory Wars. It's got to come from the top, and that's, you know, that's the responsibility those top players have, is to set the tone for what they want to see in the game. Because if they're like, hey, you know what, we don't want Datacrons, instead, just make factions rotate. That, you know, in this phase, in this zone right here, Jawas get boosts. In this phase, Jedi do. And they just kind of rotate around, and they could be random. Like, that could be fine. I mean, as long as it's, what I would say, right, the caveat I would make is that, you know, it's either got to be the same for each guild, right? That, like, Jawas here, Hut Cartel here, Hut Cartel here. That I don't think it'd be fair if, like, Hut Cartel get bonuses for this guild here, and then they get bonuses for this guild here, and then, like, up front is Ewok bonuses. Like, that's, to me, that's RNG. That's not skill anymore, right? Now, the only way I would let that happen, that you could change them, is if you could set it yourself. That you're going to have it, that you have a defensive strategy in mind, and then you could set those bonuses in whatever zone you want. That would be okay as well. But I think Datacrons need to go. Because you have this guild that it was wailing on them and saying, we can't do this anymore, we can't keep up, it's too much. Like, that's the scariest part, I think. I don't know, guys, that's kind of my honest thoughts, you know? I think I brought to light that they kind of brought this burnout on themselves in some ways, but I think that Capital Games also needs to own up and say that, I mean, I can 100% vouch as a person who was playing like, when Territory Wars was first launched, I was playing actively. I was in a guild, like, we had to figure it out. Nothing has changed. Like, the zones have not changed, right? Like, zone sizes have changed, but, like, where the ships are, like, nothing has changed. And that is a problem for this game, that they are so reliant, not reliant, yeah, you know what? They are reliant on their initial release being a success and then just never changing it. They're so reluctant to make any kind of change. And, like, even if they made a change and maybe it's not the best, but they tried, right? Like, that they tried. Like, you think when the Crate Raid was first released, I was like, hey, they probably need to fix rewards. But they tried to change something, and that was good. And I think that they need to do more stuff like that. And Territory Wars needs to be the next thing that they tackle. Fix the matchmaking. Fix how horrible it is to set defense. Change some UIs. Let us edit things when you set them down. Like, if I was to place in ships, accidentally set my negotiator with, like, my bounty hunters instead of executor, I can't go change that when it's set down. Like, that to me is ridiculous. Allow me to edit that. I can edit it for GAC. Let me edit it for Territory Wars. So if they make those changes, I think you bring CAW back into the fold and you make everybody happier. But those are my honest thoughts, guys. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below. As always, smash that subscribe button, leave likes, leave comments, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.